Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first MSRI Zoomsterview. I'm Giovanni Fernandez. I'm a research assistant with the MSRI team and a part of the CCED. And today we'll be talking with Kris Jolley of the Recycling Center on how the recycling team has worked to make themselves more profitable over the past few years. To start off, Kris, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Sure. I manage basically all solid waste from waste and some construction and demolition waste. I've been here for about 23 years, held several different roles until about the last 6 to 7 years I've been managing the operation. So we handle recycling, we handle surplus, we handle trash, we transport organic waste, trying to do more of that processing ourselves as well. And then we partner with various academic units on campus to try to promote the educational mission of MSU.
And from previous conversations that we've had, you had mentioned how bricks are part of the story of the recycling center and one of the marquees to starting our recycling center at MSU.
Sure. Kind of fun story. When I started at the surplus store, it used to be called the salvage yard. It averaged about $125,000 to $130,000 a year in sales. Somewhere across the line, we actually split for a while from the recycling department, and I stayed with the salvage yard. We rebranded ourselves as the surplus store, and we put a big emphasis on capturing everything we could from campus, trying to divert all the non-recyclable waste and trying to find a new home. And when they moved Sparty out of his former location into the new football stadium, they destroyed the base of that, which was all bricks, and we said we wanted to try a chance at selling the bricks that came from that base. So we argued back and forth with the contractor a little while and everybody, and they wanted to clean the bricks and said it wasn't worth time. And I said, no, literally just throw them in a pile. We'll come and pick them up and we'll sell them as is. So we were selling chunks of brick from the Sparty base for anywhere from $35 to $150, averaging about $75 for a normal semi-clean brick. Interestingly enough, that drew the attention of the vice president of finance at the time, kind of surprised, and then he really started paying attention to the revenue we could generate from selling junk, or in their words, trinkets and crap is what they would say a lot. So we generated a lot of money and revenue for recycling, not necessarily recycling, but the surplus store at the time. From the sale of these items and the revenue from the sale of those items, a good portion of that, up to 75%, would go back to the departments that we took the items from. So it was a great system, and the bricks got us on our way to building this new facility. He realized that we could generate money off of selling junk, so we wanted to know if we could also figure out how to fund a combined surplus store and recycling center.
In terms of accessibility with recycling and waste management, how is the recycling center making the campus and the greater community more involved in construction and demolition waste and recycling in general?
When I took over, I kind of brought the same mentality I had with surplus to the organization, is that we wanted to take everything that anybody would give us and we would figure out where it would go. That includes construction and demolition waste. We really wanted to take the decision making out of the customer's hands, because if you tell them we don't take something one time just because you didn't have space, that means they're always going to think that you can't take it. So on top of that, in designing the building and the facility, drop-off centers were incredibly important. We have recycling drop-off centers at the apartments, both apartment complexes on campus, and then we have a 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week drop-off center at our facility. That we not only take MSU recycling, but we take recycling from the community at large. Originally designed for faculty, staff, and students, we decided to just open to everybody. We really wanted to support those students who lived off campus, because there aren't a lot of recycling options if you live in apartments. And then we also participate in several different regional collections. There's the Tri-County Recycle-Rama event that includes 3 counties, several cities, and some private businesses who partner to collect materials from the general public. We provide services there for household materials and scrap metal and bikes and different things. So we do our best to try to partner actually across the state to help people build their diversion programs.
Are we seeing more facilities like the MSU Surplus and Recycling Center in other parts of the states, or other initiatives from larger similar universities?
So just in our region specifically, you're not going to find a building like ours where it has reuse and recycling combined. But the city of Lansing recently signed a contract for a single stream material recovery facility, so they will have more processing capacity in Lansing. Yeah, I think it's important to note that we really built our facility because of a lack of options in the current market, and we would have to send all of our recycling to either Grand Rapids or Ann Arbor at the time, and the trucking cost did not make for a viable business plan. So we built our facility out of necessity. Our surplus store, which now generates over $3.5 million a year, we were operating in a building that did not have heat through most of the building for a while, did not have running water or bathrooms. It was kind of unheard of on a college or a university campus that you work in a building without bathrooms. So the building was built out of necessity, but I'm excited about what's happening now in Lansing. I have consulted with several other schools over the years. Grand Valley consulted with us and they opened up a surplus store. Been working off and on with Emmett County in northern Michigan to try to develop some surplus options. So nothing specifically like exactly what we've been able to build and model. I think Emmett County is the closest. They have one of the best recycling programs in the state. The only thing they're missing is this reuse option, and they're very, very interested. It's just trying to figure out the finances and how to make that happen. There have been 2 other universities in the country that I know have put in MRFs. So, I don't know if we influence those decisions, but certainly the trend is to try to figure out how to manage all waste comprehensively, not just recycling, not just bottles and cans, but trying to advance recycling and diversion across the board.
Next, we're going to dive into some challenges facing the sector. What are some of the challenges your business has faced in the material salvage and reuse sector, and what has been your greatest challenge recently?
So our single greatest challenge is the cost of landfilling material. For compacted front load waste, it costs us about 1.2 cents a pound to landfill materials. It's really hard to make a business case for diversion when it is so cheap to throw stuff away. Also, managing waste is an afterthought on a lot of projects. When you're building a building, say for 19 or 20 or $30 million, when your waste line item in that contract is only about $10,000, it's really hard to put a focus on it. There's a perception that it's more work, it's going to be more costly to divert materials, the value isn't in it. There's just also an innate system that it's the way things have been done for years is a contractor gets to take anything out of a building before they demo it. And so, that's a bit of a bonus to them as well. And it's really all about just the difficulty in changing the structure that we currently have has been incredibly difficult. It's hard to get good data. Everyone does usually yard to pound conversions. When we capture data from a construction project and they pull 20, 30 yard roll-offs and they all weigh exactly the same thing, concrete and bricks weigh a lot more than insulation and drywall. So it's really hard to get good numbers. It's hard to sell people on this idea that there's value in the material, that you can cover the cost of deconstruction. There's also tight timelines for a lot of folks. So when you're deconstructing or you're trying to take stuff out, that adds more time. So on campus, especially when you're doing construction projects, a lot of times you have a really tight window, say over summer, where you're starting at the day classes get out, and you're trying to get the job done before students get back in. So taking an extra week just to pull materials out of a building can be a big challenge. Those challenges really haven't changed in the last 10 years. They're the same ones we faced then. I think they'll probably be some of the same ones we're facing 10 years from now.
In the same vein of challenges, COVID-19 has had an overwhelming impact on almost every sector in the United States and across the world. How has COVID-19 affected the MSU Surplus Store and Recycling Center, especially in terms of having less students on campus and maybe some changes in how the recycling process needs to be done?
We've spent the last 10 years building our staff up to be able to handle a full campus, full residence halls, full apartments, football games, basketball games, you name it, 60,000 people on campus in a day. Now we're at a very, very small fraction of that going forward. So the biggest challenge to us is generating enough revenue to cover our staffing. The residence halls, for example, who are now closed for the most part, they produce 45% of the trash and recycling on campus. That's a big impact for us because that's also 30% of our budget to collect materials and process it. So unfortunately, we're not able to bring back most of our students this year. That's about 60 to 70 student employees that will not be working for us this academic year. That's the biggest impact. And we're quickly trying to shift our focus on generating more revenue for surplus, reaching out to some of those partners I talked before. If they're having a challenge with their surplus assets, can we fill that gap? Because the university is also not going to be doing a whole lot of construction or remodeling over the next several years. That's a downturn in what we're going to be getting in surplus. I will add, however, there's always bright sides, right? So we're now selling, because of people working from home, we're selling items like flat screen monitors, that we had way too many for what we could sell. Now they're flying off the shelves and we can't keep them. Office furniture is selling for 2 to 3 times what it was selling for 6 months ago or even 4 months ago because people are setting up their home offices. There are good things about it, but overall it's a big challenge. When it comes to recycling, plastics were already an incredible challenge, have been for the last 3 or 4 years. Mixed plastics especially, the market for those has been minimal to poor. We always had a market for it. We could always get it recycled, but we were paying for transportation for a lot of that material up to more than landfill cost. So especially when you include handling for hand sorting, because we hand sort all of our plastics. It's a very labor intensive process. So we've actually scaled back our sorting. We are only taking number 1 and 2 bottles and jugs and jars for plastics right now. Everything else has pretty much stayed the same, but plastic's been the biggest impact. Our drop-off center hours are cut back from being open every day to 9 to 3, Monday through Friday. It's because we have staff out there and we're monitoring what people are putting in the bins, because a little bit of contamination means we have to throw the whole thing away because we just can't. We don't have the labor to sort it, and we don't want to expose our staff to risks from drinking containers and other stuff. In a normal year, we'll get about 30 million pounds of stuff total. That includes trash, recycling, surplus, organic waste. I anticipate this year we're going to be more in about this 7 to 8 million pounds. So that's a huge impact on staffing and our ability to keep people employed.
And continuing with staffing, in terms of employee training, how does the recycling center make sure that staff is up to date on safety procedures and the entire process that they need to be aware of?
That's been one of my big focuses over the last 6 or 7 years, is getting students more integrated in our program, giving them more work experience that's applicable to what they're going to go do after they graduate. As far as safety and training, we put a huge emphasis on safety in our program. We're constantly evaluating what we're doing. We paid a third-party person to come in last year and go through our MRF, a third-party company and our MRF is our material recovery facility. That's where we sort recycling. To go through and analyze every process that we did. They came through with a handful of recommendations that we quickly adapted to everything. Anytime we have an accident, anytime anything happens, we immediately review it and adapt policies. We have great partners in the infrastructure facilities or infrastructure planning and facilities. Safety person, Andy Smith, he's outstanding. Environmental health and safety on campus, they're also a good partner. They're very helpful as well. We train over and over and over again. We spend money on PPE. We had a couple punctures over the years where people put hypodermic needles in their recycling bins. And we've had some staff that have gotten punctured by needles. So we've invested in some, I think they're over $20 for a pair of gloves. They're puncture resistant gloves. I mean, we take it very seriously. We certainly don't want anybody to get injured on our watch when we do things. Thankfully, we haven't had any serious injuries in a while. Hopefully that stays the course. Our biggest fears are still what people put in the recycling bin, because we get propane tanks, which can explode, batteries, which can start fires, hypodermic needles, as I mentioned. That stuff, those contaminants still get dumped on us regularly. Actually, better now that we're actually have people staffed at our drop-off center making sure that stuff doesn't come in.
What are some of the future goals for the MSU Surplus and Recycling Center?
So our big goal for this year is to try to maintain our full-time staffing, given all the fiscal challenges for the university, so we can provide the same level of service next year that our customers have come to know and appreciate. It's going to be tough for our public customers in our drop-off center. We realize our hours are difficult. We realize one of the other changes I didn't talk about earlier is the surplus store is only open for online purchases right now and curbside. I know that's been difficult for folks. We're doing our best. In a way, I actually think we're more accessible this way, because there are a lot of folks who didn't get to see what the surplus store had because our hours are kind of limited. There's a lot more stuff online that you were never able to see before. Our goals right now are also to build that online store up and just keep adding more and more stuff to there. We're talking about doing deliveries, at least within, say, a 30-mile radius of the store, folks who cannot get into the store. A lot of changes like that. It's hard to look past that. Obviously, our big goal is we want to see the university get to 70% diversion. Right now, that's taken a backseat to just trying to weather the storm that's currently going on. But we're just wrapping up building a hoop house behind our building that'll house a vermicomposting operation. We won't be able to handle all the campus organic waste, but it does put an impact in, say, about 200,000 to 300,000 pounds a year. It also closes the loop on our tours. When we give tours of our facility, students can come in and see how composting works, have an opportunity to volunteer and help make compost, and also help us figure out how to do one of the most important things is, what do you do with that compost after you make it? How do you market it? How can you turn it into a commodity that you can sell to actually pay for the service of creating it? And I'd be remiss not to mention that we still want to build construction demolition diversion. We want to change that program. I'm actually hopeful that this pause in construction on campus, where everything is slowing down, that we can take some time to rebuild policy and work towards doing more diversion and figuring out how to incentivize that for our contractors.
Perhaps we can end on the historically or otherwise important pieces or materials that you can buy or find at the surplus store.
So where we're different than most of our partners across the country, I was actually on a call last week that I forgot that we've got it pretty easy in Michigan. A lot of other schools are state universities, and they're subject to some pretty archaic disposal guidelines by the state, where it's easier for them to throw stuff away than it is to reuse things and sell it. So we have a lot of flexibility. So we sell a lot of things you're not going to find in other campuses. We sell all of our athletic apparel, used athletic apparel. Some of it's not used, it's just surplus excess. We have one of the world's largest comic book collections on our campus. We sell comic books. You'd be surprised how many comic books we have for sale. The revenue from the sale of those comic books go back into buying more comics. We partner with several different departments on campus for fundraising activities. The marching band every 8 years has their uniforms destroyed and turned into pillows, where they turn the coats into the pillow and they stuff them with the pants. We sell those for the marching band. That revenue goes back into buying more band uniforms. We have the MSU Shadows program, where we take trees that are diseased or have fallen on campus and mill that down into pens or tables or other things that are for sale. The revenue from that goes towards increasing urban forestry education on campus and hopefully eventually planting more trees on campus. Any kind of office furniture you could ever see. We sold a train engine before. We sold a Zamboni. Anything you see on the Michigan State University campus, or even in our county offices across Extension, you'll probably see it at the surplus store at some point. A quick browse through our website or following us on social media, you'll be able to see a lot more of what we have. And we really do try to make everything available. One of our pushes is to renew our donation program and rebuild our free area outside, and having more items available for free to take, especially now that our staffing levels are so low. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, people routinely, when I have visitors come and they see what people are taking out of our store, they'll ask me why people are taking that, because they're just shocked that somebody wants a brick that we talked about before, or a three-legged chair. Why are they taking that broken chair? It's not my place to ask. And I just know that almost everything has value to somebody. So it's how you package that and make it available to the customer that makes sense. And my goal is always to have the widest variety of stuff, that there's always a reason for you to stop by, and I hope you find something. And then when you're there, maybe you end up buying a car. But yeah.
Well, that's great. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on our first Zoomsterview. Hopefully there will be many more, and we can revisit this conversation at some point.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks.